getting there. New strings. Slipping out a little bit. How are you guys? It's April 3rd. Oh my God. Already April 3rd. Hey, just kind of warming up the old hands here. I'm going to tell you guys a lot of good stories about the prototype, which is just delayed until next week. But I've still got this whiskey here that needs a home. This is all going into the fund, man. I did bring my pedal board back today, so you got a little echo on there. That is the UA Orion pedal. And I got my Les Paul fixed, finally. I took it over to Michael DeTemple, and he put on a mastodon nut. Fossilized mastodon ivory, or mammoth, whatever you call it. Mastodon, I think, is the technically correct term. And then he told me my tuning keys were slipping also, which is fine. It's a 20-year-old guitar. I know it fell down a couple times at the shop, so no big deal. I put the Godot locking tuners on. They look exactly the same from the front, other than the posts are kind of short, which gives you a little more angle at the nut. This guitar maybe rings too much now. So I have a Tone Pros bridge on it. You know, the locking stud, bridge, all that stuff. And the fossilized mastodon ivory nut. That's a lot of ring. And then these keys seem to make it ring more. They're locking keys that have a little more angle behind the nut. And the guitar got jumpier. I'm going to take the echo off there. I got my little slapback echo on, but I mean, it's just... Hey! Randy Kraft, good to see you, buddy. Go ahead, take off, do your business. It's all good. Love you, buddy. And Haas. Yeah, man, I got the Les Paul sorted out, I think. It's holding tune pretty good. I just put new strings on it, so it might stretch a little bit today, but... With my Ron Ellis pickups in here. I can't even remember which ones I have now, because Ron always just takes care of me. I think I have the Leroy Parnell in the neck and the Betty in the bridge. They're both pretty low output pickups. They're under 8K. This is just the whiskey. You know, last week I was playing the whiskey. A lot of you guys thought I was playing the prototype. The prototype, maybe you missed me saying, is getting open heart surgery right now. Mike had to move his shop, so we're kind of a week behind. It's no big deal. So if I put a little bit of compression on this and a little bit of verb, you get like endless. It just rings. That's all right. I've heard that before. That's a good pun. That's all right, Hoss. You're good. I know I have a funny name. And I'm proud of it, actually. Let me throw a little just clean booster in here. Turn the compressor off. Man, that's dirty as shit. Guitar rings, doesn't it now? little bright and crispy. Let's mellow it out just a hair. So that's a clean booster, just slamming the front of the amp, but the Barber Direct Drive is actually a little Marshall. So, even though, believe it or not, this is not EL34s. Sounds like it, doesn't it? This is 6L6s. You know, because one of my favorite things that I hear all the time is, oh, well, it's a 6V6 amp. It should sound like that. It's a 6L6 amp. It's going to sound like a twin. Does this sound like a twin? No, it doesn't, does it? All of those. Yeah, Haas, it does. It opens up the mid some and kind of tamed the uncomfortable highs. Like, you know, bone nuts are kind of the thing. I think they come back from when we all played higher output pickups. You know, like in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, we were all playing hot pickups. That was the thing. And hot pickups don't have a lot of top end. It's all mid-range. So the bone nut kind of made more sense. I find with my lower output pickups, the bone nut has a little bit of brightness on top that I don't like. It's just me personally. I'm not saying it's bad. It's me personally. I don't like it. So the Mastodon nut, Mammoth, kind of turns it into more of a bell tone, crystalline sound. You can even hear acoustically, like, how much this guitar rings now. I mean, and I'm using the pure nickel strings, the Ernie Ball pure nickel strings, which also roll off a little bit of top end, but they have big body to them. You know, they sound big and robust. I'm almost tempted to try nines on this guitar because it rings so much, just to see what happens. But listen to that. I mean, that's just the guitar. How much body that has, and it's going sharp because I'm hitting it too hard. But that translates into the amp. Great. The nines might be a hair brighter. If I use the pure nickel, it shouldn't. I'm loving that sound. Guitar sounds so mean. Thanks, BJ. BJ Hansen here. I got the camera right. I'm having a hard time reading the comments. Let's move the screen around here a little bit. There we go. Now I can see it. But anyway, yeah, BJ, this is just a whiskey. This is one of the handmade whiskeys, which there are only 5 of them. We never sold these. Every whiskey we sold was a printed circuit board. So these are rare ones. And you see it doesn't have the black on black, you know, setup that the regular whiskey has. And it has vents. I like this one a little better, to be honest with you. They're all really good. You wouldn't tell the difference unless you're playing them side by side. And even then, you might pick the other one. It's just, there's no right or wrong, right? What's that last chord? Yeah. It's a hard chord to hit. You got to go G to E9, sharp 9. Brian Mendes in the house, man. Put a Floyd Rose tremolo with a locking system. It'll stay in tune just like Les Paul intended. Brian doesn't talk like that, by the way. You know, I'm going to think about that, Brian, and get back to you. I'm going to give it its due, you know, respect, and I'll put all the time into it that it deserves. Okay, no. Good to see you, Brian. I'm glad you're here, man. Yeah, there's now a tariff on European rock music, my friend in England, Hoss Thompson, says. Shit. Man, it's hard to avoid that subject around here these days. Chrysler just laid off 900 people this morning. For some reason, your black whiskey has a hand-wired turret board. You might have got one of these early ones. Somehow, some way. Where'd you buy it? Usually the ones that are hand-wired, they weren't ones we actually sold. There might have been some friends and family ones, you know. You might have got one of those. Hey, Howard, what's happening, man? Who thinks of that, right? That's a song called Focus by a band called Hocus Pocus. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned politics. It's not politics. It's economics. That's a bit of shithouse tack. No, it's okay. Trust me, everybody's worried about it here. I mean, the mood over here is bad. Chrysler laid off 900 people this morning. That's day one. You know, the American car people, now the American car companies are going to be fine. Well, for every American car, about 60% of their parts come from somewhere else. Mexico, Canada, Europe, China. It's a global economy. It has been for decades. So parts are sore. Even with my amps, there's certain things I just can't buy in the United States. No one makes tubes in the United States. For example, these little black plastic knobs. No one makes these in the United States. Even these switches, they don't make them here, you know. So, I'll get this thing. I just put strings on it, so it's moving a little bit. It's not bad, though. It's holding tune way better than it did before. Even now, it's just barely out of tune. I put these strings on last night and played it for like 10 minutes. So, they're still moving. Anyway, yeah, the tariff thing. I hope we can use it off of reverb.com, Rob. Oh, that's cool. Well, we're curious who had it. When it applies to making amps, it's not gratuitous political punditry. Say away. Yeah, I mean, I'm politically pretty neutral. Part of having a political science degree is that you learn that all politicians are, what's the word? I don't know how to say it in English. There's a Latin phrase for it. Shitheads. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. I don't like to cuss, but I don't know. It's a Latin word, shithead. I don't know what it means. Yeah, this guitar's holding tune a lot better and ringing like a bell. Jesus Christ. I just have a little echo on there. If I put some compression on, it'll just ring forever. That's 1176 pedal. Yeah, it's really bad timing because we're trying to go right back into production, and I can order most things here domestically. Resistors and capacitors and stuff. Maybe tube sockets. I don't think so. Tubes, definitely not. I can buy chassis here in the U.S., but they cost 3 times as much. You're politically celibate. Good move. Yeah, I kind of come from a political family, so I grew up around a lot of it, so I kind of have opinions. I'm not really a party guy. I've voted both ways. I think it's a mistake because the parties change all the time. You know, Ronald Reagan wouldn't be welcome in the Republican Party anymore, and Bill Clinton would barely be a Democrat. So things change. It's okay. Anyway, the tariffs are going to be a challenge for me. And let's just be real, before we move on to something way more interesting, let's just be really clear on who pays the tariffs. I sell into countries that tariff products. Japan, Australia. I don't pay those tariffs. My customers do. And they pass it on to their customers. So it's Japanese citizens and Australian citizens that are paying those tariffs. So when everything coming into the U.S. gets tariffed, China is not going to pay for that. You are. I am. We are. There's no ambiguity here. There's zero ambiguity here. You and I will be paying these tariffs. It will make our day-to-day lives a lot more expensive. It will also cost a lot of people their jobs. And that's what breaks my heart. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. So, but just be clear on who pays those tariffs. I don't know why anybody doesn't go, excuse me, that doesn't work. I don't pay tariffs into countries that tariff U.S. goods. Never have, never will. Citizens of that country pay those tariffs. So there you go. Hoss Thompson says, neoliberal economics has a lot to answer for. Oh, yeah. To be honest, it needs to end. Tax wealth, not work. Yeah, we used to do that up until the 80s. And, you know, when people say, well, my dad used to get a job and he could work one job and pay for a house and 2 cars and my mom didn't have to work. Yeah, that's back when we taxed wealthy people. That's the way it works. I remember in the 80s here, someone had to explain to me what a homeless person was. I'd never heard of a homeless person because we used to have shelters and help for people that were destitute or had mental illness or whatever. And that's because they cut all the funding for that. Anyway, all right, let's talk about amps. I'm digging this sound, though. Ray Colby says, how's the prototype coming along? It's coming along well. Thank you. We're just waiting. Mike had to move his shop. Otherwise, I'd have it here for you today. If you get the new shop in North Hollywood, you got to call it the NoHo. Yeah, maybe. It's a good idea. I like NoHo. It has some fun jokes you can make about it, too. NoHo. Daddy. NoHo. It's a pimp joke. Pimp joke. Is this thing on? Anyway, yeah, so Mike, unfortunately, the building where Mike's shop was in, they had to move, and so that means Mike had to move. And he's all moved in, and his shop is almost functional, and he's telling me I'll have an amp next week. So we're almost there. We just submitted some final projections and forecasts for expenses and sales. So we'll be pitching for money. Always a pleasure listening in, my friend. Oh, thank you. What's happening, Rob? Yeah, Rob Taylor here in Canada. Rob, let me just tell you something. And Canadians need to hear this. So cut this out and share it with your Canadian friends. I'll even make a clip of it. This whole thing with Canada is made up as a distraction to draw our attention somewhere else. Donald Trump does not have any power or authority or anything to take over another country. If we were to try something like that, the entire world community would kill us. But we don't want to do that because everyone in the United States loves Canada. No country has ever had a better, friendlier, nicer neighbor than we have with Canada. We think of you guys as family, brothers, cousins, part of the family, close as it could be. All of this nonsense is just made up distraction to draw our attention away from other things. I don't know why anyone would want to pick a fight with Canada. For those of you who haven't been to Canada, Canadians are the nicest people. They're the most polite, fun people with a really highly developed sense of humor and beautiful place. The whole thing, every experience I've had in Canada has been wholesale great. I have, run into the drunk hockey player, toothless, moose fucker kind of people, but it's so rare. It's so rare. We don't even have Canadian jokes here. We have jokes about everybody in the world, but no Canadians. You know, the only Canadian joke I know. How do you make a Canadian apologize to you? Step on his foot. That's how nice Canadians are. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I in your way? You know, like, anyway. So, Rob, I'm just saying, I'm speaking to you personally. Please tell all of our Canadian brothers and sisters that this is nothing. It's all distraction. Yeah, we do business with each other. I mean, hell, General Motors has American companies have factories up there. We buy energy from Canada. We buy oil from Canada. You sell us oil at a discount, not even OPEC prices. I mean, come on, this is crazy. Anybody who knows Canadians knows exactly what I'm talking about. So as a civilized American, sorry, Rob. I apologize on behalf of potty trained Americans. There's no problem with Canada. There will not be a problem with Canada. Nothing's going to happen. And I have, my dad's wife is from Montreal and she has 3 sons. And like they're reaching out to me going, hey, is this real? And I'm like, no, it's not. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate your understanding. Yeah. Oh, no, there's so many facets to our relationship that are just unusually great. And it's just dumb. It's so stupid. I can't put it into words. And as you guys know, I can talk about anything, but this is just mind-blowingly dumb. So anyway, I'm going to cut this clip out and share it on the internet. But pass that on to all your Canadian brethren and sistren. Oh yeah, it'll heal. Don't worry. We'll hopefully before we're dead, but yeah. So anyway, that's enough of that. The world is a weird place right now, and we're all going through it together, and I'm sorry. It's very difficult. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, personally. But what are you going to do? God made Canadians and everybody said, oh, they're so nice. He smiles and then he drops a hockey puck. Yeah. You know how loud this guitar is? I'm not hitting it hard. That's just a little bit of echo on there. Yeah. And put the direct drive on for a little more Marshall layer. Yeah, man, that's some good rock and roll sounds. Works for me. So you can have this amp at a nice discounted price if you would like. The money goes into the 65 Resurrection Fund for Mike Franciscini and myself. But anyway, so the prototype, it's the amp you heard 2 weeks ago with KT88s in it. And this is just for proof of concept. That doesn't mean this is the first amp we're going to make. The concept that I'm trying to show is that I can play with voltage and current on tubes and the amp will still sound correct and feel correct. And also that the tubes are not under stress. The new power transformer, this is the second version of it. Let's go over the clean channel here and just run on pedals and see what happens. There we go. Yeah, that's just pedals. It's my whole board. Compression, drive, clean booster, tight echo, a little tiny reverb. Yeah. So, I'll have the proof of concept, and then we're actually going to go pitch. The VC people that we're working with want to see a proof of concept. So, hopefully we're getting into the next phase of all this stuff. Ew, I'll change that. Yeah, that's just on the clean channel with pedals only. We'll go back to the dirty side. Like Luke, come to the dirty side. All right, who wants to buy an amp? Who wants to buy an amp? Make me a good offer. Good offer. Good offer. Hey, that's that price. It's my auctioneer voice. That's some shit right there, boy, isn't it? That's awful. Anyway, I'm actually pretty excited. Like, I'm ready to roll. And we've got about 4 or 5 chassis we've identified we want to try this on. But this one proof of concept, this is kind of the amp that'd be the hardest to do it with the KT88s. Because they're so big, and they need a certain amount of voltage to fire up, right? So if we can pull it off with these, we can do it with anything. Is the assumption. Then I can order some more transformers. That's a compressor on doing that. Such a weird chord. That chord progression to me is just always the test, you know. It's hard for an amp and a guitar to do that and not get all mudded up. Even though I've gone slightly out of tune. I think what happened is when I put these new tuners on, I need to readdress the intonation up and down the neck a little bit. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. I dig it. I dig it. So one of the things that I'm doing with my show is I'm shamelessly kissing up to large corporations in hope of sponsorship. This week's show is brought to you by Porsche. So Ray, because the prototype has got an attitude that's a bit dark in a good way. Maybe back out of the chassis to differentiate from the old blue line. Yeah, this is not the prototype, though. Remember, this is a whiskey. This is a hand-wired whiskey. We'll have the prototype is good. I mean, the one we have sounds really good. That's an amp we made for Richie Sambora that we never sold. There's 4 or 5 amps we made we never put on the market. We just made them custom for artists. Yeah, black's the thing these days, isn't it? Black wheels on cars, black trim. Anyway, the heck was I just saying? Oh my God. Anyway, Wow. Brain fartimus maximus. You got me, Raymond. What was I talking about, man? So, anyway, what do you guys, when you talk about prototypes, when you talk about new amps that we're going to make, you know, and granted, these are going to be ones that you can play loudly, but you'll be able to play them and they sound correct at low volume without any tricks. So no more master volume, no more master voltage. You're actually just going to be able to select the low power thing, and the tube is operating correctly. And I'm not just starving the tube of voltage. We're actually feeding it current as well. So what big loud amps would you like to hear at lower volumes? You know, one of the amps, I have one of those little Marshall SV20s, the little plexi, and it runs on two EL34s, and it's 20 watts, and you can knock it down to 5 watts, and it sounds great. They're not doing it in a very robust way. The tubes are actually just choking, and it still sounds good. It's got a little bit of that. Rob Price wants high watts. Okay. That's a big circuit. Partridge transformer. SLO 100, yeah. Aren't they making like the SLO 100, but it's a 20 watt amp? No, does it not work? Does that sound right? I think this nut's actually grabbing it here. Brand new. Trying to put some Big Ben's nut sauce in it. New nuts have to be played in a little bit. You got to play them in, then repolish them. 310 Tweed Bandmaster hasn't been done in a sustainable way since they made them originally. Yeah, the 310-inch speakers is the issue. The Bandmaster circuit's great, though. I think, honestly, Haas, I agree with you personally. I really like that amp. And I had one a long time ago. And it was a little rock and roll machine. It was great. There's that magic Tweed era, sort of 57, 58, 59, where they're all good. Like low-powered twin. 57 low-powered twin is so damn good. They didn't make very many of them. You know, my favorite Tweed amp is a little Harvard. I was just talking to, oh, I got something in my eye, sorry. Just talking to our friend Jeff Hanna from the Dirt Band last week, and we were both like, yeah, man, that Harvard is the coolest damn amp there is. That might be one worth remaking. But I think the 310 Bandmaster, I think the footprint's too big to sell many of those. But I could be wrong. I'm often wrong. So, something to think about for sure. I can get a lot more dirt out of this amp. I mean, I don't have the drive up that high. I can throw a little on top. And let's throw a clean booster in there. It's a lot of dirt. Yeah, no, Haas, I think that's a good idea. I'm not dinging you at all. He said, I was just thinking the ultimate Tweed amp with a new paradigm you're thinking could be cool. Yeah. I always kind of wonder how much of the 310 Bandmaster's magic is from the 310-inch speakers at a mismatched, because like they're 2.7 ohms when you do it like that, 8 ohm speakers, and then the output transformer is 2 ohms or 4 ohms. I can't remember. It's an interesting combination. It's pretty unique. Joe, yeah, Scotty Bratcher. Hey, buddy, how are you? Scotty Bratcher says Dr. Z just did a Joe Walsh 310 Bandmaster. I haven't seen a single one in a while. Yeah, I mean, it's, this is going to sound awful. I don't mean it that way. Ray Colby, Marshall Club and Country got overshadowed by the J. Yeah, it's a great circuit. There's an age thing to this because no one under the age of 50, pedestrians, not necessarily professional musicians, but they don't know what that amp is. They've never seen one or played one. When I was a kid, I started playing guitar in 1977, and that amp was 20 years old. So, like, if you had an amp now from 2005, it's like, it's not really that old. So those were around. You could buy Tweed Fenders for nothing. I bought a Tweed Deluxe for $50 one time when I was in high school. Yeah. Rob said that it was tighter and a little brighter. Yeah, the SLO should be with 4 EL34s in it. It should be, or 4 6L6s. It should be. It should be a big thumper. The whiskey was more vintagey sounding. Yeah, different amps, both great. But so there's a thing where, like, my favorite amps are, the Plexi that I played with for years. Like a 50-watt Plexi. I have the little 20-watter here. I was thinking about throwing it. Maybe we'll do it next week and swapping out tubes. I put Mullard EL34s in there. I have my last XF2 EL34 Mullards, and I put in 2 Mullard Blackburn preamp tubes and a Telefunken smooth plate. 4 6L6s. Yeah, that's a lot of bottles, man. That's some serious glass back there. And like a Vox AC30, a real one, a JMI Vox. Most people under 50, dare I say even 60, have never played one of those amps. They've heard them recorded, and we can have this conversation again, but amps don't sound the same in person as they do on record. Now people are making a lot of amps to sound like recordings of amps, and that's part of the reason digital's so great, is that you're actually playing a recording of an amp. That's what it is. So, you have the coloration of the microphone and the preamp in the room and the board, the EQ that's put on it, the compression, all that kind of stuff. But that's not the way they sound in person. And people my age, too, the other thing is we didn't have amazing stereos when we were kids. So I know the sound of a Plexi more than I do the recording of a Plexi, if that makes sense. The stereo I had when I was a kid was just mediocre shit, and I knew it wasn't accurate. So I'm more attuned, pardon the pun, while I'm tuning. These new keys have a great gear ratio, too. You can really fine tune. Yeah, I think that's grabbed a little bit. I got to juice it up. I'm making a point, I swear. I have a tuning neurosis, as you can tell. There we go. Oh, that's big. God damn, that sounds good. Anyway, so the thing that I think Haas is a concern is I could make some really neat reissues of really old amps, and I don't know that anybody would care. Like Marshall's, like a Plexi's great. Peter and I have our own, Peter especially, has his own formula for modding plexis. That's really good. It's a mix of Jose Arredondo and the Eddie Van Halen mod and some other stuff, and it's nothing crazy. Like, it doesn't turn into a Dietzel or a Bogner or something. It just makes it sound really, really good. So we might do something like that. It'd be, getting that sound at a low volume. Marshall's doing a pretty good job with this little one, other than it's not built to a real high standard. I mean that in a nice way. It's a mass production amp from China. They do a good job. It actually sounds great. I put good tubes in it. It really made a big difference. But even the power tubes that came with it were JJ's. They were fine. They were really good. But what I thought I might do, I don't think I have any time today, but that amp is cathode biased. So I thought maybe we'd swap 3 sets of tubes in there live. Would you guys be interested in that? So I have some Mullard EL34s, real ones, XF2 Mullards from the 60s, double getter XF2s. I have these KT77s right here that I would like to put in there and see how those sound. And there's also the JJs that came with it. So I could set up and it's cathode biased. And you can see what difference tubes make. Mark's on, yeah, the Empire is the answer to your plexi itch. Yeah, it is. It is 6v6s, which that amp's convincing as a plexi. We could go a little more on the nose for sure. Haas says, I'm wondering what your dream amp would be if it could do absolutely everything you wanted it to. My plexi. That or my 64 AC30. Those are my 2 Desert Island amps. I don't need anything else. There's a lot of other amps I really love, like these little tweeds we're talking about. They're great. For a while, I had a pair. I had a matching pair of 1963 Princeton and Deluxe. Hey, what's up, Axel Inman? Hey, man, I was just talking about how we're sponsored by Titleist. The new GT drivers. Have you heard all their slogans? They're great. I'll tell you in a second. Anyway, yeah, that's just me personally. I mean, I put groceries on the table with a plexi for a long time. I can play anything with it. There's no master volume, of course, which is a problem for a lot of people. Would it be possible to have an AC30 and a plexi in the same amp? Sort of. I mean, a lot of the inherent quality of each of those amps are the power tubes, because the preamps aren't particularly complicated. Gain stage, gain stage, gain stage, cathode follower. They're pretty similar, although the gain structures are very different between those preamps. The actual roadmap is pretty similar. It would be hard to do. The way to do that, Haas, is I would have to make the EL84s sound like EL34s or vice versa, which is pretty hard to do. I mean, you can get EL84s to sound really good, like very Marshall-y if you want. That's something to think about. It's definitely something to think about. If I did 4 EL84s. Yeah. Raymond Colby says, what circuit were you thinking of when you designed the Soho? Well, it's kind of a mashup, really. I had that 63 AC15, which had the EF86 in it. And then, I'm a big Vox queer. I lived in Britain. When I lived in England, I played Voxes. I gigged with Voxes, old Voxes. And the cabinet's big, yeah, on the Empire. It's hand-wired with all that switching. We would do that printed circuit board now. The PCBs have gotten as good as anything. Things have changed. But anyway, so on the Soho, so the first part of it is the EF86. I happen to have one of these here. And then the rest of it is kind of like an AC30, sort of. There's another gain stage and a cathode follower. So it's kind of a mashup of those. And the phase inverter is, halfway phase inverter, like what's in the London. And then the power section is very similar to the London. So it's kind of like AC15, Marshall, AC30, all thrown together and mixed up, right? I think it works really well. I don't know of any other amps like. Well, that's not true. There's another good amp maker here in town who copied it. I won't say names. It's note for note. As soon as he started making them, someone sent me a picture of the guts of the amp. I went, "Hey, you bought a Soho?" And he goes, "No, it's a so-and-so's." That's a good sound. I'll clean it up just a little bit. And let's throw a little bit of direct drive on top of it. A little compression. That's a pretty solid sound. Why are you saying oops, Axel? Oh, have you heard the new Titleist slogans for all the drivers? I think you should send this to your boss, Axel. So just ready, rolling. The new GT drivers by Titleist. GT2, a little extra for me and you. The GT3, when you play pretty well and you want a little more, for free. The GT4, when you hit it really well, but you need just a little more. And now the new GT1. It's small, but boy, is it fun. So, yeah. Titleist is, this is what influencers do, right? They just start talking up people, and then after a while, they go, okay, we'll send you some shit. Right? So that's what I'm doing. So this week is brought to you by Titleist. Next week is brought to you by Porsche. There is no substitute. Anyway, yeah, we're just about out of time already, believe it or not. So those are great questions, guys. I appreciate it. I'd love to get your input and feedback on the kind of stuff you'd like to see in these prototypes. Turn the direct drive off, just basic. That's pretty good, just Marshall sound. Ah, thank you. Pro V1's on the way. Right on. You know how to butter a guy up. So that's just a little compression, which gives it just some body. It's nothing crazy. Here's without it. Throw a little compression on. Raymond Colby says, whiskey, true to its moniker, always makes me want to take a shot of bourbon. Soho and I talk with a slight British accent. Yeah, that's right. So the Soho came, I used to drive a catering truck in London. And when I was done, I would sit in Soho Square and wait for my roommate at the time to get off work for a ride home. And Paul McCartney's office was there. That's holding really well. It's weird. I mean, brand new strings too. Paul McCartney's office was there. MPL Productions, right? And so I would sit on the bench there after work. I got off work about 2:30. I worked from like 6 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. Ray says, when you make the no-ho, I'll be back down. Oh, yeah, come on, baby. We'll have a party at the shop anyway. I sat there for a long time waiting for Paul McCartney. And I drove a catering truck, right? So it was full of food. So I kept going in there saying, hey, here's my card if you guys would like some food for your office. A lot of British people don't go out for lunch. They just have food brought in. especially in London, hardworking people, right? So finally, after I'd been there for a long time, like a couple years, I never saw Paul. And I went in there one time, I go, what's the deal? And they're like, oh, he's got a subterranean entrance on behind the building. His car goes underground. And I'm like, oh. I thought for sure I'd see him just walking out or something. Let's see, can I get this down to AC 30 levels? Yeah. So, I know we're just kind of fizzling out here. I'm just trying to think about like all these great ideas you guys are giving me. So, yeah, what amp circuits to make? I mean, any new bass options on the way? Sorry. Not right away. We made a bunch of bass amps. AC50 is a great amp. It's just an AC30 with EL34s in it. Thanks, Axel. You like that sound? Yeah, that's just kind of 80s Marshall, right? This is what this circuit is. Let me turn the echo off, right? Maybe a little dirtier, just a hair. Little booster. Let's try a little direct drive on it. I think I like the booster better. I was never a big fan of that band, but I love the sound of mixed guitars. So yeah, Hoss, I don't know if you guys remember on the show, I had two AC50s. I had the cathode biased one, which is really rare. It's only a 64. And then I had a grid biased one. I sold them both to Tim Pierce. You're Hoss blooded. Check it and see. I get it, you motherfucker. That's pretty funny. I like it. AC50s are great amps. They're very similar. Like you're supposed to have a 12A U7 or 12A T7 in the second stage. You just put a 12AX in there. It gets dirty as hell. The amp that I bought was from Lonesome Dave's widow. Lonesome Dave from Foghat. You guys remember Foghat? I remember the song Slow Ride. And that was the amp. It was an AC50. Let me put this up here really quick. I'm just going to hold on to it because this room's a mess. So it was a great amp, big rockin' amp, but I don't know, again, Hoss, I think we're getting into vintage territory that a lot of people don't know. I would like to there's a few amps we did that we had to quit making because the tubes failed all the time, which now I can get around that completely. Matter of fact, they're going to sound better because the way I'm running and the tubes are actually getting nourished instead of the shit beat out of them. That's a technical term. I don't mean that in the vulgar way. But like the Royal Albert, a pair of KT77s. It was sort of a, what do you call it? Selmer treble and bass kind of circuit. Really nice. Peter and I owned a 63 Selmer treble and bass, with the crocodile skin on it, that we had together. And, Ray Colby. This is funny. I always wonder if my wife liked the Soho. She's from Brixton, South London, right on. I couldn't make a proper cuppa, but I had a Soho. Marriage saved for a while. Well, I can show you how to make a proper cuppa. So first, go get your PG tips, boy. But anyway, man, I'm tired today. Sorry, guys. Spacing out. Anyway, there's the Stone Pony, also with the 7591s. That might have been the best sounding amp we ever made. But the tubes failed. It was heartbreaking. Oh my God, I love that. And there's a few of you guys here that have Stone Ponies or had them. By the way, if anyone has a high-powered Stone Pony out there, I'd like to get it back. If you want to use it as a prototype amp, we'll update it and give it back to you for free. Or if you want to sell it. Either one. But I need to get my hands on a high-powered Stone Pony. All Points Bulletin. There's a few people that are sending amps back in now. Keith Urban's going to send back a couple of Royal Alberts. Jeff Hanna's sending in his little Elvis. You know, like guys are sending in their amps for us to do the new paradigm on them. Axel Inman says, my Stone Pony is awesome. Scotty Bratcher says, I second, third, and fourth that notion. Yeah, the guys that have had the Stone Pony know what I'm talking about. So I'd like to make a high-powered Stone Pony, which in theory was 44 watts, but I can run it down safely now, and it'll sound killer. A 30-watt amp is louder than hell. You can't play in any nightclub with a 30-watt amp, especially out here on the West Coast and up in New York. Stage volumes are nothing. They got this new thing now called PA systems. Mark, good question. Is it your intention to build the other models under the same high current, low voltage platform the producer had? Yes and no. It will be high current, low voltage. It's going to be further along that path with more options. So the producer just runs at one setting. This one's going to have 2 or 3 settings that you can drop it down to. Hey, Phil, what's happening? Better late than never. What'd I miss? All but the last 3 minutes. Good conversation, though. We're talking about prototyping and what we want to do. So yeah, Mark, we're going to go further down that path than we did with the producer. So, if the Sambora head with 7591s can work for you, I'll get there. Yeah, totally. Is that got 4? Is that 4 7591s or 2? Yeah, absolutely, Scotty. That would be very helpful. Yeah, we're starting. I don't have a shop yet, so I can't take in 1,000 amps, but we will soon. We will soon. I think we really crossed into another chapter of this pre-setup. Peter Stroud have a Stone Pony? I don't know if he still does or not. Good question. I can certainly ask him. I talk to him quite often. Yeah, I don't know. But it's the high-powered Stone Pony that I'm looking for. The high-powered 4 tubes. And I could technically drop the 2-tube one down, turn it into about a 15-watt amp. Yes, Scotty says for him. Great, thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind. I can certainly help you with the shipping and stuff. So that would be cool. That would be very cool. Anyway, we're kind of close it here in a minute. But this is great. I really appreciate the input, guys. Mark Saulnier says, I want a Stone Pony. Well, I think we're definitely going to bring that one back. I don't know if we're going to make it in the initial batch of just hand-wired amps we're doing, to get back in the game. I don't know why we couldn't. No, there's no dumb questions. At the risk of a dumb question, any space for a bias, tremolo, and reverb? Well, I'll probably never put a reverb in an amp for 2 reasons. One of which is modern reverb tanks are horrible. You have to buy 5 of them to get a good one. And the other one is pedals sound better. There are digital reverb pedals now that sound way better than anything I can do with a spring and a tube. Now, I can't make the spring reverbs consistent. I can't make them. It's all junk. If you want just a basic reverb, yeah, I do that. But it's not worth it. It raises the price of the amp like $600-800 bucks. I would rather just buy you a pedal. I have this UA Heavenly reverb. It's great. It's 3 different kinds of plate reverbs. Sounds amazing. But the Strymon Blue Sky, stuff like that, those are crazy good reverbs, and they're not very expensive. I mean, they're expensive for pedals, but they're not expensive for what you get. So, but as far as a bias tremolo, maybe that requires a triode and some circuitry and a couple of knobs, which often is hard to do. And thank you, Ray. I appreciate you coming by. Soon, you know what I'd like to do when we get our shop is do the show from the shop with some guests. All you LA guys can come on over and sit on the sofa. Remember when we had the Sofa Kings with Miles and Brett Chasen and all those guys, Bob Kulick, Ron Ellis used to come over all the time. All kinds of really great dudes. Yeah, the Line 6 thing, pedal's great. Switch for bias and harmonic trim. Well, now you're talking into a lot of circuitry there. Again, you can buy a trim pedal that works really good. It's not really worth it to put it into an amp because it raises the price of it so much. It raises the price more than the cost of getting an excellent pedal that has like 10 choices in it, whereas I can give you one, right? And when I manually wire up a tremolo, I could put in a DSP, you know, I can put a pedal basically inside the amp if you want that. And a lot of people do that. Axel says, I can't find a trim pedal that does what my 62 Princeton Vibreverb and Little Elvis does. Yeah, that's a good point. Elvis has a hell of a good tremolo on it. It just requires space. We'll see. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying maybe. I'm not against anything, really. The problem is, you know, you guys are nice, and I get a little bit of an echo chamber here because no one's going to come here and tell me my amps suck, right? So I have to filter a little bit. So when we did the bias tremolo, I had an equal amount of people going, well, how come it doesn't act like a blackface tremolo? I'm like, well, yes, Axel, it feels good. Yes. I hear you, man. There's a lot of jokes there. I'm leaving it alone. But that's not a bias tremolo. That's an opto tremolo that's literally interrupting the circuit. It's like going like this, you know. Whereas a tremolo or a bias tremolo is like someone taking the volume knob and turning it up and down really fast. They feel and sound very different. And even with the people that like the bias tremolo, they're like, well, I don't like the range of it. You know, I want it to go faster. And so we change it and make it go faster. And they go, but now it doesn't go slow. And I'm like, well, it's a moving target. You know, you can't broaden the range. I can just move it up or down. Yeah, I personally like bias tremolos way better myself. But again, we're kind of hearing an echo chamber. So I have to be careful about that. We'll talk. Who's that guy? James Demeter makes a tremulator or something like that. It's supposed to be a great pedal. Anyway, that's a good idea, though. Yeah, and according to Axel Inman, I just say yes. Okay, whatever you want, man. We're all good. Anyway, I do got to run. So next week, it'll either be the prototype or we're going to sit here and play Swappy on power tubes in a little Marshall. Just so you guys, just fun with tubes. I could swap out preamp tubes too, but it gets kind of arduous. But the way this head's set up, but it's a cathode bias EL34 amp, right? So I can swap in. I have XF2 Mullards in there right now, and then I have these these are not JJs. These are Shiguang KT77s, and then I have the JJ EL34s. I would like to get a pair of KT66s in there too and see what it does. Maybe I'll order some before next week. So anyway, we can be total amp nerds together. What do you think? Rob Price says, I end up using tremolo pedals instead of the amps tremolo because to different amps bias tremolos sounded too different. Yeah, they're totally reliant on the tube. If your tube has a lot of gain, it's going to thump harder. It's going to go whoop, 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 whoop. And if it doesn't have much gain at all, it'll be kind of subtle. So It is a little primitive. I kind of like that, but some guys don't. Some guys find it annoying. There are things a lot of people in the modern world have been told they shouldn't do, or shouldn't like, or they should be bothered by, that no one was ever bothered by until someone on the gear page said, you should be bothered by this. One of which is pickup noise on a Strat or a P90. You ever listen to a Jimi Hendrix live record? The best moment is when he rolls up his volume and you can hear the pickup noise. Like, no one cares, and you can't hear it when the song is playing. And learn how to just use. Anyway, I don't get it. And then the other thing that's kind of a big debate are like effects loops. I personally don't use them. I personally don't get anything out of it. I know a lot of people do, and they're very insistent on it. But, you know, the guitar players that I liked growing up, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Billy Gibbons, you know, Eric Johnson. You want to get into the later stuff. Stevie Ray Vaughan. Those are people I really enjoyed as a kid. None of them ever used a loop. And their guitar sounds amazing. You know, The Edge, whose first name is The. But how many effects pedals did that guy use? Right in the front of an amp. It's front of an AC30. There's no effects loop on a vintage AC30. There's no effects loop on Plexis. So anyway, I think it's just personal preference. What I do take a little issue with is people on the internet instructing you to be bothered about things that you were not bothered by before. That's the part that makes me go, what? So anyway, enough of that. So yeah, but we are going to put effects loops and everything because it's required by a lot of people. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're an effects loop guy, God bless you. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not dinging it at all. I'm just saying don't be sensitive and bothered by things because someone told you to be. If it does bother you, then it bothers you. That's cool. But anyway, you get the idea. Haas says, sounds like fun. Have a grand day and a lovely week, old sport. You too, me bruv. I got to get over to Britain soon. I got to get back to England. I miss it so much. I really do. I felt so at home there. It just wasn't a problem. It was great, and I miss it. I miss it a lot. Let's go to England, everybody. Anyway, what I'd like to do in the future is when we get to shop, we'll start doing the show live from the shop. Have guests back in, people playing guitar like we used to. I got a lot of friends here in LA that would love to come. They're all named people that you know, and we'll enjoy watching them play guitar, and they'll help us prototype through these amps together, and we'll do it with you. And I get your feedback dynamically. I'm not going to design these things in a vault, you know, and assume that I am the oracle of everything good, and I hate that shit. Anyway, excuse me. We'll do this together as a community project. Of course, you know, I'm the house, and the house wins all ties, but nonetheless, I love the input, and you guys always bring up things that I hadn't thought of. Like, I didn't think about a tremolo until just now. Like, yeah, okay, sure, it's not a big deal. Anyway, I do gotta go. It's always a real pleasure to talk to you guys, and I'm very grateful that you waste some time with me. Hopefully it was not a waste of time. But so anyway, this whiskey is for sale. It's going into the fund. You can have it for like, I think we can sell this for like $17.50. It's brand new, and it's a hand-wired one. Very rare. It's really nice. Anyway, I got a split. I apologize. I love you guys. And I'll see you next week. One way or another, we'll be doing fun stuff, yeah? We're going to be doing either the Marshall tube swap or we're going to be playing the prototype. Come on, baby. Come on now. All right. You guys have a good week or good weekend, and I'll see you next week. Take care.